Hello, welcome back. This is the daily Dante reading and reflections, Canto number 5. I'll be reading from the Longfellow translation as usual, followed by some brief reflections. Before I get into this, I want to reiterate that these are definitely more spontaneous reflections. I'm not ruling out revisiting the Divine Comedy at some later point and doing a more thorough treatment of it. Anyways, without further ado, I'll begin reading. Thus I descended out of the first circle, down to the second, that less space begirds, and so much greater dole that goads to wailing. There standeth Minos, horribly, and snarls, examines the transgressions at the entrance, judges, and sends according as he girds him. I say that when the spirit evil-born cometh before him, wholly it confesses, and this discriminator of transgressions seeth what place in hell is meet for it, girds himself with his tail as many times as grades he wishes it should be thrust down. Always before him many of them stand. They go by turns, each one unto the judgment. They speak, and hear, and then are downward hurled. O thou, that to this dolorous hostelry comest, said Minos to me, when he saw me, leaving the practice of so great an office, look how thou enterest, and in whom thou trustest. Let not the portal's amplitude deceive thee. And unto him, my guide, why criest thou too? Do not impede his journey, fate ordained. It is so willed there, where is power to do that which is willed, and ask no further question. And now begin the dolesome notes to grow audible unto me. Now am I come there where much lamentation strikes upon me. I came into a place mute of all light, which bellows as the sea does in a tempest, if by opposing winds 'tis combated. The infernal hurricane that never rests hurtles the spirits onward in its rapine. Whirling them round and smiting, it molests them. When they arrive before the precipice, there are the shrieks, the plaints, and the laments. There they blaspheme the puissance divine. I understood that unto such a torment the carnal malefactors were condemned, who reason subjugate to appetite. And as the wings of starlings bear them on in the cold season in large band and full, so doth that blast the spirits maledict. It hither, thither, downward, upward drives them. No hope doth comfort them for evermore, not of repose, but even of lesser pain. And as the cranes go chanting forth their lays, making in air a long line of themselves, so saw I coming, uttering lamentations, shadows borne onward by the aforesaid stress. Whereupon said I, Master, who are those people whom the black air so castigates? First of those, of whom intelligence thou fain wouldst have. Then said he unto me, the empress was of many languages, to sensual vices she was so abandoned, that lustful she made licit in her law to remove the blame to which she had been led. She is Semiramis, of who we read that she succeeded Ninus, and was his spouse. She held the land which now the Sultan rules. The next is she who killed herself for love, and broke faith with the ashes of Sychaeus, then Cleopatra the voluptuous. Helen I saw, for whom so many ruthless seasons revolved, and saw the great Achilles, who at the last hour combated with love. Paris I saw, Tristan, and more than 1,000 shades did he name and point out with his finger, whom love had separated from our life. After that I had listened to my teacher, naming the dames of eld and cavaliers. Pity prevailed, and I was nigh bewildered. And I began, O poet, willingly speak would I to those two who go together, and seem upon the wind to be so light. And he to me, Thou wilt mark when they shall be nearer to us, and then do thou implore them by love which leadeth them, and they will come. Soon as the wind in our direction sways them, my voice uplift I, O ye weary souls, come speak to us, if no one interdicts it. As turtle doves, called onward by desire, with open and steady wings to the sweet nest, fly through the air by their volition borne, so came they from the band where Dido is, approaching us athwart the air malign, so strong was the affectionate appeal. O living creature gracious and benignant, who visiting goest through the purple air, us who have stained the world incarnadine? If were the King of the universe our friend, we would pray unto him to give thee peace, since thou hast pity on our woe perverse. Of what it pleases thee to hear and speak, that will we hear, and we will speak to you, while silent is the wind as it is now. Sitteth the city wherein I was born, upon the seashore where the Po descends to rest in peace with all his retinue. Love, that on gentle heart doth swiftly seize this man for the person beautiful that was taken from me, and still the mode offends me. Love, that exempts no one beloved from loving, seized me with pleasure of this man so strongly, that, as thou seest, it doth not yet desert me. Love has conducted us unto one death. Cana waiteth him who quenched our life. These words were borne along from them to us. As soon as I had heard those souls tormented, I bowed my face, and so long held it down until the poet said to me, What thinkest? When I made answer, I began, Alas, how many pleasant thoughts, how much desire conducted these unto the dolorous pass. Then unto them I turned me, and I spake, and I began, Thine agonies, Francesca, sad and compassionate to weeping make me. But tell me, at the end of those sweet sighs, by what, and in what manner love conceded that you should know your dubious desires? And she to me, There is no greater sorrow than to be mindful of the happy time in misery, and that thy teacher knows. But if to recognize the earliest root of love in us thou hast so great desire, I will do even as he who weeps and speaks. One day we reading were, for our delight, of Launcelot, how love did him enthrall. Alone we were, and without any fear. Full many a time our eyes together drew that reading, and drove the colour from our faces. But one point only was it that o'ercame us, when, as we read of the much-longed-for smile, being by such a noble lover kissed, this one, who ne'er from me shall be divided, kissed me upon the mouth, all palpitating. Galeotto was the book, and he who wrote it. That day, no farther did we read therein. And all the while one spirit uttered this, the other one did weep, so that, for pity, I swooned away as if I had been dying, and fell, even as a dead body falls. Okay, so we are finally in hell proper, if you can call it that. Before that, there was, kind of the dishonorable mentions, the ones who did not choose any sides during life. Hell would not even let them cross the river. Then after that, we have limbo, where we have more like the honorable mentions, the virtuous pagans and those who followed the light of reason and attained the natural virtues but lacked the supernatural ones. Or did they? Remember, I have my own thoughts on that. And then now we're finally at the infamous 9 circles of hell that Dante uses. And it's important to know that as we go, the 9 circles are organized themselves into 3 divisions. One's reason is more and more twisted in order to commit the sins that are housed there, shall we say. So up here at the top, we have, lust, gluttony is coming up soon, things like that. Things that are related to appetites of the body. Those, even the most wise and reasonable people might fall prey to here and there. And so they're organized at the top of hell. Whereas later on, there's violence and there's fraud. Fraud, Dante makes the worst of all. And, traitors as well. Though for those, he counts those as much worse because they are not just appetites of the body, they twist one's very reason. They twist their very soul in the process. Both can get you sent to hell, the lesser and the greater, but that's why he has them organized in this way, and why the punishments are so much greater as we go further. But anyways, before we even get to that, Dante takes a figure out of Greek mythology, again, Minos, or Minos, who was classically put as the judge of the underworld, and he adopts that role for him here as well, except he twists him and makes him all demonic looking and monstrous. So again, he keeps adapting these classical figures to fit within, to fit within the new Christian cosmos, so to speak. And oddly enough, in the process, he's wedding classical philosophy to the Christian faith. That same ordering of the severity of sins that I just said, starting with the more bodily desires, and then progressing to sins against reason, or sins in which reason is very twisted. That's the exact same progression of Aristotle in terms of the powers of the soul. He starts with the vegetative, the nutritive powers of the soul, those very same things: the urge to eat, the urge to procreate, the ability to just sustain oneself alive, and then progresses to the greater powers of the soul: reason, intellect, love, perhaps. And then they arrive where the lustful are punished, the first circle, I believe, and they are thrown about in a whirlwind, and it's dark. Both of those are important. Number one, because, again, reason is not involved, really, in giving into lust. That's what's symbolized in that. And remember, Dante was in the dark wood. He lacked the light of reason. So, and then also, they're tossed about. That's an example of contrapasso, again, which means where the punishment fits the crime. It's either matches perfectly the sin that's been committed, or it is a complete reversal. In this case, these souls who were lustful, and Dante gives us many great examples, they are tossed about, helpless, on the winds, in the same way that they allowed themselves to be tossed about by their passions during life. For all of Dante's use of Greek mythological figures and figures from Homer, it's important to know that he never actually read Homer. There was not really a good translation of it available at the time. He's going off of, for sure, secondhand, maybe third-hand sources. So that is why he says that Achilles combated with love at the end of his life. That is not Homer. That is an alternate Achilles written at some other point, in which Achilles was killed by Paris when he went into the city of Troy under a truce, trying to get married to somebody. I think one of Priam's daughters he had fallen in love with. So, again, that's not from Homer, or even the lost books of Homer. That is something completely different, but it's what Dante knew, and that's what he incorporates, and it's why Achilles is placed where he is. Helen, however, that's much more understandable. In my series on the Iliad, of course, and the Odyssey, we talk about how it's questionable whether Helen meant to do what she did or not, or whether the gods were just manipulating her. But again, in the Christian worldview, God does not make you do anything. Even the devil cannot make you do anything. You have free will, and you are completely responsible. There can be mitigating factors sometimes. You can not have all the right information. You can be, again, thrown about by your passions and allow yourself to be consumed by them. But there's a choice, or maybe a series of choices that leads you to that point. And so, for Dante, therefore, there's no real possibility that Helen was forced to do it by the gods, and therefore she chose it. Free will is an extremely important concept in Dante, and it's so huge throughout the book that I'm not going to be able to give it a good treatment right now. We'll have to do it piecemeal as we go. But bear in mind that every single person that you see in these 9 circles of hell chose to be there. And look for the clue that tells you exactly how it is they chose. And that brings us to Francesca and Paolo, the 2 souls that he speaks to here in the circle of the lustful. So Francesca was married to some man, and then Paolo was her brother-in-law or something. Anyways, they're sitting around and they're reading tales of King Arthur, of how Lancelot was overwhelmed by love, I presume for Queen Guinevere. Obviously he was married to King Arthur, but he woos her anyway. And as they're reading that, Paolo and Francesca themselves commit adultery. What you notice, if you look carefully, is it's not giving in to their desires that landed them here. Not by itself, anyway. Because remember, everybody sins. Everybody falls short of the glory of God. So how does a soul end up in hell? Well, they do not repent, is what happens. Truly be sorry for it and turn your life around. And that's enough to at least make it to purgatory in Catholicism, in Christianity, in Dante, right? How do we know that Paolo and Francesca did not? Because if you look, Francesca blames love for making them do what they did. Love, quick to kindle in the gentle heart, sees this one for the beauty of my body. Love that excuses no one loved from loving. It's definitely making it sound as though love came over them and they were forced to do what they did, which is not true. This is part of why Dante has to be on the journey that he is, because before you can be sorry for your sins, before you can try to get them out of your life, you have to recognize them. And if you think that somebody has forced you to do, or some other force has made you do whatever it is you've done, then you don't see yourself as responsible for them. This is why Francesca and Paolo are in hell here. Notice also that Virgil is watching over Dante as he's speaking to them. After they tell their story to him, he asks, "What do you think of that?" He's monitoring him. He's seeing how he's coming along, if he's learning the lessons that he's supposed to from this. And Dante does not learn the lesson he's supposed to from this, but eventually he figures it out, and there is a moment where that happens. How do I know that Dante didn't learn his lesson? Well, that would be because he weeps with pity after hearing their story. He doesn't notice that they're choosing to be there, that they're blaming love. And you remember, he's a romantic poet, so he kind of sympathizes in many ways. But that also means that he doesn't quite recognize sin as this particular sin as the evil thing that it is within them or within himself. And that's what Virgil's watching for. The less pity he shows in this case, in this one situation, which is hell, the more clear it is that he is overcoming affection for sin in his own heart. That's about it for Canto 5, though. I'll see you all tomorrow with Canto 6.